So I want to talk to Felix, he, him from Georgia, who's a theist, talking about the Catholic Church being a progressive religion. Welcome to the show, Felix. I'm a little curious about your perspective on this. I don't know if you heard the end of the last call, but what are your thoughts?
I heard a portion. Yeah, just the church gets a lot of flack for its history, so it's not perfect, but like there's a lot of progressive stances and moves. Like, for example, the Pope called for the decriminalization of homosexuality in various countries. He says homosexuality should not be a crime. They had a vaccine campaign. The church went all over with the Pope and all the bishops. A campaign so that everybody will get vaccinated during the pandemic. And one final example, during the pandemic, they actually changed their liturgy. So instead of everyone sharing the wine around the glass, which is their sacred right for 2,000 years, they said, okay, we're going to abstain from drinking from the wine glass to protect everyone from the pandemic, from the virus. So we only got it from the bread. Taken Jesus in and abided in Jesus. So it's a lot more progressive than people think, and I just want to, show nuance to the discussion.
Yeah, I definitely want to jump in a little bit just because of the last call that we had talking about the Catholic Church. So I get that the Catholic Church has made some steps, at least publicly, with regard to LGBTQ communities, and like it's great that they are advocating to decriminalize it. But my question is, like, what does it look like for queer people in the Catholic Church? Do you know the current official stance of the Catholic Church on whether or not, like, homosexuality is a sin?
Yeah. They believe homosexuality is a sin, just like sex outside of marriage is a sin, just like cheating on your spouse is a sin. So they don't, from what I know, they don't point out this sin as being worse than others. They treat it like any other sin, but they still allow homosexuals to take the Eucharist. They still allow them in their church services, and they still allow them to be part of all the church activities.
But here's the issue, though. It's like you can extend all of those things to keep people in the seats, but at the end of the day, what ends up happening is you have queer people that will think, oh yeah, that sounds great. It sounds like this is a loving community. And then they end up joining, and it's still that societal pressure and guilt upon these people thinking, like, as at the end of the day, they're still telling you that who you are is wrong, and who you are is messed up, and who you are is going to get you punished for eternity, or I don't know, the official stance on the Catholic Church of if it's going to send you directly to hell or exactly what. But like either way, it's condemnation of people's identities. And so if you have people coming into the church, like let's use myself as an example. So I'm a trans man. If I were to walk into a Catholic church, and I were to do all the things that you said I'm allowed to do as of now by the Catholic Church, what do you think would happen to me, as far as relationships with people in the church? Do you think I'd actually be accepted by people? Do you think people would try to tell me not to be trans? What do you think would happen if I tried to become a member of the Catholic Church?
It depends which church, because it's all over the world. So some countries, there's more like negative views about it than other countries. So
how about your church? How about
a typical church in Georgia, a typical diocese? They're very, from what I understand, they're very welcoming. They treat people from the LGBT.
But I don't want to know. Hold on, I don't want to know how welcoming they are, because here's the thing: like, they're welcoming with everybody. Like, that's part of recruiting people to your religion. Like, I bet the Catholic Church would happily welcome a Muslim into the church because the goal is to convince them to become a Catholic and to convert. But the issue is, like, getting somebody in the church, welcoming somebody to come in so that they can be preached at is very different than welcoming you in and saying, I value your identity. I value your perspective. Because like there's a distinct difference between saying that you accept somebody and actually accepting them. And I think that's a difference with maybe our views on what progressive means. Like when I say something is progressive, I don't mean whether something is giving lip service to someone being your equal. Like that's the bare minimum of being a human, right? Like I expect, if we're talking progressive, I'm expecting people to actually follow through on respecting people. And that includes not trying to make them not something and not condemning them for like it's someone that is an actual ally of the LGBT community is not going to condemn them and is not going to wave the threat of hell over their head while saying, well, but you're still welcome in the church, right?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So there's not a lot of public comments from the Pope or most of the cardinals on hellfire and doom and gloom. There's barely any mention of gays being evil by nature. There's barely any of that.
Well, there's not a lot of mention, but do they believe it? Do they believe
now
it?
There's not a lot of mention. Not now there's not a lot of mention because, you know, they are in decline. And saying something like that would push them further in decline. And as we move into the future, right, we're going to start seeing more of that. But the Catholic Church comes from a place where the LGBTQ community was burned at the stake. I mean, they were equated with Satan for a long time. And so you can't just brush the history aside and compare it. You have to compare it to today if you're going to start to say, well, there's not a whole lot of commentary on that. Nobody's going to do something that's going to make their the Pope is trying to reverse this process of people leaving. And so 50 years ago, you damn straight they were saying things like that. Felix, before we move on, I just want to kind of throw a couple things at you. So one, the LGBTQ community, homosexuality in general, is not treated just like any other sin, like you said. People get divorced, they get remarried, they stay in the church. You know, people do things that the church forgives them for a lot more easily than they do if they are gay, right? So, for example, with what's happening, the developments in the Catholic Church recently, while they're paying lip service and they're giving this kind of practical nod to say, hey, maybe it's okay that you're gay, you still can't actually be gay. Like you can't go in the church and actually be gay. That's not forgivable. Divorce is forgivable. Cheating on your wife is forgivable, your husband. Doing any of those things is not just like being gay. And then my final point, while the church had changed its policies during COVID, how is it that you can drink the blood of Jesus and get COVID? I mean, doesn't that delegitimize your belief system, right? You're taking in the blood of your supposed savior and you're all getting sick from a deadly disease. I don't see how somebody doesn't question what they believe. And so I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. Maybe that's kind of a different topic. Maybe you'll give that some consideration later. But there's no way to really kind of give credit to the claim that the Catholic Church is progressive. The Catholic Church is responsible since the inception of the first Pope for 69 million deaths around the world. And so there's a lot more work it has to do than just to say to, for example, the Saudi Arabian government, hey, maybe don't kill these people. That's not kind of repentance enough for me to be able to consider them progressive.
Okay, so let me just say what I think progressive means, so we can kind of be like on the same, more or less understanding. They adapt with the times. They grow with the culture. So they have a history of a lot of violence and issues. But every country was burning people at the stake. Everybody did that. But they've adapted to culture, so they progress with.
But hold on,
you guys agree or disagree with that definition?
My counter.
I disagree.
No, my counter to this as well is that, like, yeah, they grow with the culture, because if they kept doing the things that they were doing, people would not keep showing up. Like a lot of this, you have to think about what are their reasons for acting the way that they are. A lot of it is because these church leaders, they would have no money if they didn't do what they do, if they don't keep butts in the seats every week and get the tithe from people, they're going to be homeless out on the street with no job. So like there's some pretty intense incentive for them to change enough to get people in the seats, but not change so much that they actually have to do anything about it. And like something, especially we look at the Catholic Church with things like medical missions, which you can look from the outside and say, yeah, you know, they're going into places and setting up free clinics and giving vaccines and setting up hospitals. And that's, you know, that's a good thing, right? But then you look at what is their motivation and how are they going about these services, right? Like a lot of these, you have the constant exposure to Catholic tradition and Catholic teaching. And you see this like even with a lot of the vaccine clinics, you give somebody a vaccine, but they have to listen to a sermon about Jesus, or they have to like at least be exposed to a prayer service. Like I did a couple rotations at Catholic hospitals, and every single morning there was a prayer over the loudspeaker that doesn't matter what religion your patient is, everybody is listening to this. And there's Jesus all over the walls at these hospitals. And like, on the one hand, yeah, it's a good thing, but is the reason why they're doing the good thing because they want to do the good thing, or is the reason because they want to use that as an avenue for PR and to get people to join their religion? What do you think about that, Felix?
No, I think you're right. I think it's the Catholic Church has millions of leaders and hundreds of thousands of churches, so I think it varies from ministry to ministry. A lot of I would say definitely a lot of the ministry, a lot of the good things are done with that motive, and I think, but I also think a lot of other leaders do it because they genuinely want to help people. They generally want to do good for the world. Even if people don't convert to their religion, they still do a lot of good. So I think it varies because it's multifaceted and complex. There's many different dioceses all over the world. So I would.
So then you don't need religion. Sorry, go ahead. I thought you were wrapping it up.
No, yeah, I was pretty much done. I agree with that, but I don't think it's true in every case. I think there's more nuance to that. Yeah.
So then what makes the religion so much different than any other organization that can do good things? What makes it more necessary? It's not quite, it's no different than any other, company that has bad people or good people in it. It can be used for good. It can be used for bad. It really is not significant. And if it were headed by an all-loving God, then why are these bad things taking place? To counter you on one other thing that you said earlier, every country was burning people at the stake. We're not talking about countries. We're talking about Catholicism and Christianity. And Catholicism and Christianity, where it existed, which was in many countries, sure, they used burning people at the stake as a method to keep people in their community. But we were not talking about countries. And as we understand countries today, those things didn't exist. And so there are very, very many nuances around different groups of people and what practices they used. What I'm saying is that for the Catholic Church to advance to where it has to the point today, or to the point where it was 50 years ago, it's in decline today, but 50 years ago, it had to burn a lot of people, for simple reasons, being gay, one of them. So that's kind of where I was going with that. But I appreciate your open-mindedness, Felix. I really do. To sit here and listen to the counters that Ben and I have, and to admit, you agree with some of the things that he says. I applaud you for that. And that's the kind of conversation that we're looking to have.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Felix?
Thank you. I guess I just want to make one more point, and you can counter it or agree. Just a genuine point. You said that the sin of homosexuality is non-forgivable as compared to the other sins. From my understanding, birth control is a sin, but Catholics are still allowed to be Catholics even though they're doing birth control. So my point was that homosexuals are not exclusively like treated as a worse sin than anybody else.
Felix, could I get married to someone of the same sex in a Catholic church?
No.
Right. So
guess
I cannot, like, the consensus of a lot of religion, like, they'll say, well, you can be gay, but you just can't act on your homosexuality, which is such a cop out. And it's, again, that lip service of, I'm giving you respect, but I'm not actually going to follow through on it. Because if you're going to acknowledge that being gay or being trans is not something that you can just suppress and hide and just pretend it doesn't exist. I mean, you can, but we know that that is psychologically damaging to people. But like,
It is.
if
It is.
the
Yeah.
church would not approve of me being on hormone replacement therapy. They would not approve of the fact that I had top surgery. They would not approve of me going around being called he, him, and being even my name would be sinful in the Catholic religion. So it's like, yeah, you can say on the surface that these are treated the same and that you can forgive it, but really you're only being forgiven if you're not acting upon it, which is saying that trans people are not equal to other people, because I don't get to, like, and literally all it is for me with being trans is that I'm happier existing in this body with this name, with these pronouns, than I do with what I had before. And that's all it is. Like, I'm happy being who I am. I am existing, and even if someone wanted to call me a woman, that's not going to change how I live my life, how I exist in society. So it's like a religion that's going to say, yeah, that's fine, but just don't act on it. That's kind of contradictory and not helpful at all. And I would say that that's the opposite of progressive, in my opinion.
Yeah, I see your point. Why is it a sin if it's not hurting other people? And if you were born that way, like, why is it fair to judge you for it? I understand that. I understand. I hope the church can change that position. But,
Felix, I think
right,
I think you're a really honest guy. I had a great time talking to you. I think you should definitely call back, and I'd like to talk to you again, you know, the next time I'm on.
Yeah, I think this is a very productive conversation. And Felix, I want to say this to you and to everybody else in the audience. Like, you are one of the type of theist callers that we love to have on the show, because we disagree on some things, but we're able to talk about it in a productive way. Nobody is yelling at each other. We're able to agree and disagree on certain points. And I really appreciate that about you. So I hope that you call in again, and I hope other people in the audience we'll take that as a lesson. Be like Felix, everybody. Call in. Have this kind of conversation. But thank you for calling in today.
I enjoyed the conversation. Have a good day, guys.
Yeah, have a good rest of your day.